Welcome back to the Junkie Sports Podcast. Today, we're going to go ahead and hop right into it with our second round matchups as we're moving into the second round here of the NBA playoffs so far. So, our first matchup that we're going to discuss is between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Miami Heat. So, Davis, why don't you go ahead and kick us off and give us your prediction and your breakdown of the series?
Yeah, so I'll get it rolling, and I'm going to go Bucks and 7. And I really think the key to this series is going to be the role players for the Bucks. Obviously, we know what Giannis is going to be able to do night in, night out, but Bledsoe still has been trying to, find a groove offensively, and Chris Middleton kind of has been appearing and disappearing at very odd times throughout the game so far in the first series against the Magic. So for me, I'd really like to see those two guys specifically step up, and I think they'll have a good chance. But, this is a very scrappy Heat team that's not going to give up. Spoelstra's been living and dying by the three, and, it's been working very well. No one really thought they would have a clean sweep on the Pacers, but they came out and did it. We'll see if they can get it rolling. I think the only way for the Heat to really have a chance in winning the series is if Jimmy Butler's shoulder isn't a huge issue for him moving moving forward, because we've seen it be a problem in that last series at times. And I think also Andre Iguodala, I think, and Jay Crowder, those veterans need to help step up and, help those young guys get through against this hard juggernaut team in the Bucks. What do you guys got, Ben?
All right. Well, I agree that it'll go 7 games. However, I disagree with the pick. I'm going to go Heat in 7 because to me, it's going to come down to their benches, and I think the Heat have a better bench. So obviously, Giannis is the primary target of the Heat defense. I mean, who else would be? So Jimmy Butler is going to be targeting him. I suspect that Jimmy Butler probably won't be guarding Giannis himself, but he's going to be, right there to help whoever is. And Jimmy Butler has a huge chip on his shoulder after last season getting the shot hit over the Sixers by Kawhi. So he's coming out, guns blazing. We saw that in the first series. I mean, nobody thought that the Heat were going to sweep the Pacers. I mean, that was a pretty even matchup, and it was a clean sweep. So I know Miami's on a mission. They're on a tear right now. Duncan Robinson, he's had quite a few games where he's just gotten really hot from three. I know it wasn't the more recent games, but he has the potential to get hot and just completely change the dynamic of the game. Jimmy Butler is just a very elite defender in my mind, and I think he can stop anyone who he puts his mind to. And honestly, the Bucks didn't play that impressively against the Magic. I mean, we all thought it was going to be a clean sweep, and they dropped the first one. I mean, so obviously it wasn't a perfect series for them, and I think that could translate into this series.
Yeah, so for me, I think this series, I think it's contingent on how well the play goes of Chris Middleton. I think he's the X factor in this series, and here's why. Although I think the Bam Adebayo matchup on Giannis is going to be pretty tough for Giannis. I mean, Giannis's worst field goal percentage of the season against qualified defenders. Bam guarded him the best. And so I think that's going to be a really tough matchup. And I think Miami, with the coaching of Eric Spoelstra, are just going to defend the Bucks really well. But to me, I mean, Chris Middleton needs to play like a number 2. And in that first round, I know he had a couple good games, but overall, he did not play like a number 2 option. And I think that's the only way the Bucks get past the Heat here. And honestly, I don't see Chris Middleton doing it with the wing defenders that they have over on the Miami Heat. I mean, Jimmy Butler, I know he's got a shoulder issue going on right now, but he's a dog. I expect him to play through it. They got Jay Crowder. They got Andre Iguodala. I think they're going to lock up Middleton. And because of that, I'm also going to take the Miami Heat, but I'm actually going to take them in 6. I think this is the worst possible matchup that the Bucks could take in the first round. The Heat are playing really well right now. They have incredible depth. They got Dragic coming off the bench. I think it's going to be a really fun series to watch, but I'm going to go with the upset here as well with Ben. So
I'd also like to mention that the Heat are the only team to have a winning record this regular season over the Bucks. I know it doesn't mean a whole lot now, but it's just another thing to consider.
Well, I will say, I think the reason why this is obviously on paper a really hard matchup for the Bucks is because the Heat are obviously one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the league, and we've seen kind of the recipe for how to beat the Bucks all season has been, you just got to haul up threes and hope you can outscore them and last it a little bit. And I mean, I know we're talking about some of these one-on-one matchups, but I would be expecting the Heat to be coming out with zone night in, night out on the Bucks, try to channel some of that energy down low into the big man to try to get some big stops. And if they do go to man, Bam's a good option. But if he's in foul trouble or something, I also think Iguodala would be a good defensive matchup for him.
I agree.
So I see where you guys are coming from, and I as much as I love the Heat and I want to pick them, I just think at the end of the day, the Bucks and especially Giannis, they know pretty much what's on the line for them and kind of jumpstarting his legacy and getting it off to a good track. They need to escape out of this if they're going to want to be a perennial team for years to come, and so they have a lot riding on this series.
And I also think this is I agree, Davis. I think this is a monumental series for the Bucks, with especially considering the fact that after next season, next year's Giannis' last year on contract, and so I know there's been a lot of talk about the Bucks, like maybe Giannis forces his way out of Milwaukee or whatever if they don't win the championship this year. I think a lot of that is just hearsay and just like people trying to like stir stuff up to like find something to talk about, but I do think that's a factor this year. I really think if the Bucks lose this series and they don't make it to the minimum Eastern Conference Finals, I think that's going to be a really, really big deal. And I think that maybe Milwaukee and Giannis have a real discussion into the look of their team for next season and see where they can make moves. I mean, I've been saying this for a little bit now, but I think if the Bucks don't make it minimum the Eastern Conference Finals, I think they need to trade Chris Middleton. I think they need to find a certified number 2. That's just my opinion, but I think this is a really big series for what their team looks like going into next season, what sort of changes they make in the offseason.
Yep, no, I agree. I don't have anything else to add.
Yeah, so that kind of wraps up that first matchup in the Eastern Conference. So let's go ahead and move over into the Western Conference, where we have the Los Angeles Lakers, who are going to go up against the winner of the Houston Rockets or the Oklahoma City Thunder. Right now, the Rockets are up 3-2 in that series. I don't know about you guys, but I think we can all probably agree that the Rockets are going to win that series, especially now that they have Russ back. If you guys don't have any other objections to that, we can probably just say, like, what's your matchup for Los Angeles Lakers versus the Rockets?
Yeah, I got to go with the Rockets winning over the Thunder.
Yeah, definitely agree on that series. I mean, with even just like Russ in his debut performance back into the playoffs,
terrible.
His old OKC team, he only shot 3 for 13 and I think had 9 points in about 30 minutes, which it wasn't good. But having that other primary option threat really opens up a lot of options for that team, especially with the drive and kick and their shooting that they have. I mean. But going on into the matchup against the Lakers, presuming it's going to be the Rockets, I'm actually going to call an upset here with I'm going to go Rockets and 6. And the reason is I think, we saw a little bit of vulnerability in game 1 against the Lakers. But, I mean, for me, the Lakers have been, an interesting team to watch in the playoffs. We've known all season that it's pretty much the Anthony Davis and LeBron James show. But it seems like it's been even more so that in the playoffs, which, what do you expect? But I do think, Anthony Davis is going to have a field day. Jeff Green isn't going to be able to stop him down low. But the Rockets, the Lakers have been struggling shooting from behind the arc, especially since returning to the bubble and continuing into the playoffs. Danny Green has still been looking really, really cold every game. And so I think, the Rockets are a team that's going to live and die by the 3, and I think it's going to be enough to get over the Lakers and, help cement James Harden into a deeper run of these playoffs. This Rocket team, as I called before the beginning of the playoffs, they're a team that nobody wants to match up against, and that doesn't exclude the Lakers by any means.
So I'm gonna have to disagree. I'll pick Lakers. I'll go Lakers in 6. I think they had the toughest obstacle on their road to the championship already. Or excuse me, their first round series was tougher than this round should be, in my opinion, because Dame's hot. Dame was hot, and just the Portland Trailblazers were trailblazing. But they stopped them. They they said, yeah, no, not today. LeBron played out of his mind. Same with Anthony Davis. I really do think those guys are just unstoppable. However, their bench really needs to show up against the Rockets' elite guards. I mean, they don't have the Lakers haven't had great, their guards have not been playing very well in the playoffs so far, and obviously against the Rockets, that's a huge, huge thing. So if they are able to lock down James Harden and Russell Westbrook, I think that the Lakers should be able to take care of the Rockets easily. But if they're not, then this could become a more interesting series.
Well, I mean, I think one of the key reasons why the Lakers kind of were able to steamroll through the Blazers, even before Damian Lillard got injured, was, the big question mark was the Trailblazers defense going into that series. And, they didn't really have an answer. And defensively, the Rockets are a pretty sound team. If they're able to get some of those offensive rebounds.
They're not going to, though.
I don't know.
Come on.
Having Russell Westbrook back, he's the best best rebounding guard in the league, arguably. And
I go Luka. Luka's the best rebounding guard in the league. Let's be real here.
We'll agree to disagree. I still got Russ on that one, but
all right.
David, what do you think about the series?
And well, for me in the series, I'm gonna reiterate Ben's prediction. I've got Lakers in 6, but honestly, I think it could go Lakers in 5. I honestly saw a different series than what you guys have been kind of explaining so far with the Lakers and the Trailblazers. What I saw in that series was the Lakers were unprepared in that first game, and they played like they played in the bubble. And then after I watched Game 2, I said this multiple times to anyone that would listen. I said the Trailblazers are not going to win another game in this series. And it's because in Game 2, what I saw was LeBron and AD finally said, you know what, it's playoff time. Let's go ahead and start winning some games. And then I also saw outstanding perimeter defense by the Lakers. Absolutely outstanding. The Trailblazers, I think, were averaging like 120-something points in the bubble. And I don't have a stat off the top of my head, but they were absolutely abysmal in the last 4 games. And I attribute that to the outstanding perimeter defense the Lakers started playing. They contained Damian Lillard significantly, and Dame was on a hot streak at the time. I truly would not be surprised if this series only goes 5 games. I think the Lakers have way too much size on the Rockets. There's going to be significant mismatches. I think AD is going to average, absurd numbers in this series because no one's going to be able to guard him on the floor. And AD is such a good defender that he can go ahead and guard, because PJ Tucker is going to be on him, and I think AD can still guard PJ Tucker just fine. I think this series isn't even going to be close, but I kind of have to give it to the Rockets that they're going to take it in 6.
But
the Lakers in 6. I apologize. I would say Lakers in 6. I apologize. I misspoke.
Something to note, though, in the last 3 games that the Lakers have played, LeBron James has shot 12 for 20 from behind the arc, and he's
been playing incredible.
This season, he's been 35% from 3. And in that same stretch, Anthony Davis, who is statistically a 35% mid-range shooter, has been shooting 82%, 14 for 17 from the mid-range. So, when you kind of take that step back, yeah, they're hot, but at the same time, I don't think they can sustain that level of shooting going forward, especially against a better defensive team with the Rockets. And for me, I understand that, that Anthony Davis is going to have a field day. But I've always been impressed with PJ Tucker and Jeff Green with how they've been able to match up against some of these bigs. They're not getting absolutely dominated down low. They're still, making them work for it and going to wear them out. Absolutely. And so I don't know. I think the Rockets are going to lean even more into their just run and gun, try to get the 7 seconds or less type of offense, and that could wear out the big men for the Lakers down the stretch, and especially if you can't count on stuff happening with foul trouble, but if Anthony Davis is to get into foul trouble in some of these games, I think it can be looking real scary outcome for the Lakers. It could be pretty 30-point win in some of those games. We'll see.
All right.
All right. Well, that wraps up our 1v4 predictions for each conference. So we're gonna go ahead and take our first break. Welcome back after that nice quick break. We're going to go ahead and hop into continuing our predictions for the second round of the NBA playoffs. So the next matchup we're going to talk about is in the Eastern Conference between the 2-seed Toronto Raptors and the 3-seed Boston Celtics. Both teams swept their first round matchups. So this is going to be a really fun competitive series. So Ben, who do you got as your pick? And go ahead and give us your breakdown for the series.
I'm going to go Celtics in 7. So we already saw the Celtics won the first game pretty handily. I mean, they just all around great play from the Celtics and all around not so great play from the Raptors. I just think that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are going to. This is the time where they really shine. Is this the conference semifinals? Because I don't know how much. I know Jaylen Brown has more playoff experience than Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum's already got some pretty valuable playoff experience, and he's already been balling out in the playoffs this year so far. So I really don't see this momentum halting. The only question I have would be with Gordon Hayward. But at the end of the day, he isn't the huge determining factor for the team. I mean, they still have some great stars without him. In the first game, the Raptors didn't really we kind of saw them lack, that big star, because they don't have that big star. They have Spicy P and Kyle Lowry, but that's not like a Kawhi. I feel like this Raptors team needs that big superstar to really have a great deep playoff run. So that's why I have Boston 7. So I still think it's going to be a great series all around.
I'm gonna stick with the Raptors, and I'm also gonna say 7 games. But if I'm the Raptors, I'm a little scared of the Celtics for sure going into this series. It's not the Nets matchup they had in the first round. So this is their first big test here in the playoffs. And I mean, at the end of the day, they were a championship team last season, and they still secured the 1 seed without Kawhi Leonard this season. A lot of that's due to the championship and playoff experience of that young core that they have, and the Raptors definitely have a lot more wings to answer the Celtics' offensive productivity as opposed to the 76ers, who didn't really have anyone to stop Jaylen Brown and Tatum and Walker, who all were averaging 20 points a game in that first series sweep against the 76ers. Sorry. And for me, I think Gordon Hayward's absence is really going to be the key reason for me why I'm picking the Raptors in this series, because what they're getting off the bench in those replacements with like Brad Wanamaker, Semi Ojeleye is obviously not the same level of threat that you have with Gordon Hayward on the court. And although, they're solid role players, they're definitely not the kind of guys you want late in the game matched up against, Kyle Lowry or, Fred VanVleet. And although Pascal Siakam has struggled in some of the games getting his shooting rhythm, and same with VanVleet for that matter, they've combined for, 2 for 14 from 3. And so that's pretty sad. However, I will say I think at the end of the day, the Raptors have a lot more defensive answers for the Celtics, and without Gordon Hayward in this lineup, it's really going to be the Jason Tatum show, and I don't know if it's going to be enough to get past this veteran team.
So my prediction is I've got Celtics in 6. I don't want to underestimate what Gordon Hayward brings to this team. I mean, he facilitates their offense, but I want us to go back and remember that when Jason Tatum went on his absolute tear near the end of February and March, or the beginning of March, um, he was doing that when Kemba Walker was injured and out. And I think we need to realize that they have four absolute stars on their team in Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum, Kemba, and Jaylen Brown. And when one of those guys go out, I think it almost makes their team a little bit better to an extent. I don't want to underestimate what Gordon Hayward does, and obviously, like they would be a much better team with him on the court. But I think when you take him out, it gives Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Kemba more opportunities to shoot, more opportunities to exploit the weaknesses in the defense of the Raptors. I think they're gonna all three of those guys are gonna have incredible series. And I also watched the first game pretty intently, and how the Celtics their defensive game plan against the Raptors I thought was really interesting. They had Marcus Smart on Pascal Siakam, which is a very interesting matchup. And Siakam was not taking advantage. He got in foul trouble really early in the first half, which allowed the Celtics to take such a large lead early on and never let go of that lead. And they also had Jason Tatum on Kyle Lowry for much of the game. And I think for the Raptors to gain any momentum into this series, I think they need to take advantage of that Kyle Lowry Jason Tatum matchup, just with Lowry's speed and quickness. Jason Tatum's just not going to be able to guard him. But I just think the Celtics are so talented, and I don't expect the Raptors to shoot as poorly as they did in that first game. But as you said, Davis, I'd be really worried if I was them. I mean, they just got their butts kicked, and it was absolutely terrible. They didn't play very good defense at all on the Celtics, and their offense was in a standstill. I think the Celtics are just so talented. That's why I got them in 6.
Do you think that as this series progresses and, fatigue starts setting in, game 5, game 6, if it goes that far, that the lack of the Celtics bench is going to play a big impact in the series? Because the Raptors arguably have some of the best pieces coming off the bench with Serge Ibaka and Norman Powell. And, if you look at the Celtics bench, especially without Hayward, they're really hurting. And so you're going to be relying on that starting rotation even more. And so I think later in the series, that can really come back to bite them.
I don't. And the reason why is because I think their bench, although it definitely is weaker than the Raptors, I think with having Brad Stevens as their coach, I think a lot of their bench players fit so well in their starting lineup that they don't, because whenever they play their bench, they rarely have just 5 bench players out there. They usually have at least 1 or 2 of their starters, and I think their bench players fit so well with their starters. I mean, they have Robert Williams, Enes Kanter, Brad Wanamaker. I just think these pieces fit so well with their starting lineup that I don't think it hurts them in the long run. I think they're going to be able to – I think Brad Stevens has several different lineups and different tactics he can use to keep attacking the Raptors' defense. I don't think it's going to be that big of a factor as we move later into the series, although the Raptors do have a stronger bench. I just think the Celtics defensively are just going to be too much for the Raptors. Do you guys have anything else to add for that first round or that second round matchup?
No, I think you covered everything I had to say, really.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing for my X factor for the Raptors for this series. If they're going to want to come back and claw their way back in, I think Marc Gasol is going to have to really step up his game. He didn't shoot well from behind the arc in game 1, obviously, and only managed to put up 7 points. But, if he's able to get going and get eaten down low, I think he can help claw the Raptors back into the series.
All right, so let's go ahead and move into the second round matchup in the Western Conference. So it's going to be the Clippers versus the winner of the Jazz versus the Nuggets. So let's go ahead and talk about that Jazz-Nuggets series next. An absolutely fantastic series going on right now between those two teams, with Donovan Mitchell and Jamal Murray just playing absolutely out of their minds. Jamal Murray put up another 50-point game last night, and both those players have put up multiple 50-point games in this series. It's just been really, really fun and entertaining to watch, especially seeing those 2 point guards really blossom into superstars during this series. Just in the series, I mean, obviously they're not like superstars throughout the season, but they've been playing incredible. It's a really, really competitive series. So let's start off with discussing that Game 7. And so I'm very curious to know, who do you guys have winning that Game 7 and playing the Clippers in the second round?
I think the Jazz are going to win it. Donovan Mitchell, obviously, has been on a tear. So is Jamal Murray. However, I believe Donovan Mitchell's a better point guard. I don't think I'm going to get any heat for that. But saying that, I also think that he's more consistent. I know he's more consistent. Jamal Murray, he's played very well in the playoffs before this year, but he obviously never on this level. But he's never been able to sustain it like he is doing right now. And I mean, he's put up 50, 42, 50 in the last 3 games. I really don't think that he can put up another 50-point game, and the way that they win is another 50-point game. So that's why I have the Jazz over the Nuggets.
I'm going to take the other end of the stick. I like the Nuggets still. I'm holding true to my round 1 predictions. And because I remember whenever we were making those predictions, the key for me for this matchup was if Jamal Murray can have a big presence in the series. Because, last couple of seasons, he, like you mentioned, Ben, he hasn't been exceptional in the playoffs, and Jokic has had to carry them more throughout. But, Jamal Murray has answered to my call for him and has scored 142 in the last 3 games for him. And, I mean, he's also playing very inspired with different things going on, around the society and whatnot. And I think he hasn't slowed up. He hasn't taken his gas off the pedal quite yet. And so we'll see what's left in the
pedal off the gas.
But I don't know. I just have that blind confidence in the Nuggets right now.
Yes, so this one's a tough one for me. I think this is going to be a fantastic Game 7. I'm really, really looking forward to it. I think that fourth quarter is going to be incredible, just watching Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell trade buckets as they've done in the fourth quarters this entire series. But I'm going to go with Davis on this one. At the end of the day, I think the Denver Nuggets are a better team. I think the only reason they went down 3-1 is because, honestly, they just, outside of Jamal Murray, they just weren't playing well. I don't know. I don't think it's much of an argument that the Denver Nuggets are a better team. I mean, obviously they're the higher seed, but I just think throughout that entire lineup. And they also have, I believe, Gary Harris is now back. Yeah, he played last game. I think having that extra body, another starter back for that roster, I think they're gonna come back from that 3-1 deficit and win this Game 7.
Yeah, I actually really think Gary Harris is a good player to talk about in this Game 7, especially because the Nuggets were getting attacked pretty hard whenever Michael Porter Jr. Would be in there. That the Jazz took advantage of that pretty much anytime he's on the court and just attack him. And Gary Harris is one of the more elite defenders in the league, and so I really think having him back is another key reason why the Nuggets are going to be able to take this Game 7. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll see. But here's the thing. I don't think it's going to – whoever wins Game 7, I don't think it's going to matter because whoever wins is getting steamrolled by the Clippers. I got Clippers in 5 regardless of who wins because we saw some problems in the last series with the Clippers against the Mavs, but that was also because Luke was playing out of his damn mind. He was on an absolute tear, and they were able to stop him. And whoever wins between Jazz and Nuggets, they're going to have to go up. Their best player, either Donovan Mitchell or Jamal Murray, is going to have to go up against Kawhi or Paul George. Neither of them are going to put up the kind of numbers they've been putting up against those two elite defenders. And the Clippers are just too strong of a team to get beat by either of these teams, in my opinion.
I mean, if we're talking about those guys absolutely shutting down players, you would think that they would have already done that with just Luka Doncic. They haven't really.
You'd think so, but I think what we saw from Luka was just like unworldly play. Like I really don't think anyone could have predicted. Obviously, he didn't come up with a win. I didn't think anyone was going to think he was going to win, but he showed out a lot more than a lot of people thought he was going to. So I think the credit goes more to Luka than the diss on Kawhi or Paul George.
But I mean, talk about sensational play. Whoever wins this, Donovan Mitchell or Sorry, I'm blanking right now. Jamal Murray.
Jamal Murray.
They're also, on that same level of play right now as we're speaking. And so I don't think it's going to be as much of a steamroll as we might initially be thinking, especially because we can't discount that the Mavs weren't really at full strength outside of game one in that series. Kristaps went down with the injury, but also the ejection early in the game two, I believe.
Well, that was game one as well.
That was game one.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So I don't know. Like, yes, the Clippers are obviously, have been one of the favorites since the beginning of the season, and there's no reason at this point to think that, that's going to stop. But I will say, that Mavericks matchup that we were hoping for with a healthy Mavericks team didn't end up coming throughout the whole series, and so they've had time to rest though, and I think the fatigue with the Game 7 and all this energy will come to an end with whoever wins, Nuggets or Jazz. And I agree. I'm going to go Clippers and 4.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was I would like to mention real quick. That was a good point you brought up. The Clippers have that game. They're not playing 7 games like either of these two teams are. So they're going to have that extra rest going into their series. Okay, so although you're just talking about the Jazz versus Nuggets, I really don't think that matchup is going to matter when either of them face the Clippers, because I think the Clippers are just going to steamroll right over either team. The Clippers are just too sound of a team offensively and defensively. I mean, you have two of debatably the top 5 players in the league. I'm not saying Paul George is top 5, but some people would consider him. So those two elite two-way players going up against either of these teams with the rest that they've gotten, having to not play a Game 7, I just think the Clippers. I'm going to go Clippers in 5.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you, Ben, but I'm going to go Clippers in 6. Although I think some of the keys to this matchup are going to end up coming down to trying to obviously be able to stop either Donovan Mitchell or Jamal Murray. It's kind of a similar viewpoint to how I was looking at the Trailblazers and Lakers series going into round 1. I think both those young stars have the ability to take a game, maybe 2, if they're playing really well as a team. But at the end of the day, the Clippers have been one of the favorites all season for a reason. And I don't think they're going to struggle as much as, the media might want us to think going into this series.
So I have the Clippers winning the series as well. But assuming the Nuggets win Game 7, which was my pick, I think the series is going to go 7. And the reason why is because I think people overhype the Clippers. I think on paper, yes, they're the best team in the NBA on paper. But honestly, we really haven't seen it. I mean, in the 6-game series, I mean, if the Mavericks were healthy and didn't get screwed over with technical fouls and Porzingis' ejection, I think we'd have a completely different matchup here in this second round. And so I think the Clippers get overhyped a lot. I think there's absolutely big questions with Doc Rivers and some of his coaching decisions right now. And I just really don't think that defensively, I don't think they make the greatest selections. I mean, I was saying this to you guys off the episode, but I don't understand why Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, arguably the 2 best perimeter defenders in the NBA, are not guarding Luka Doncic, who was the best player on the court in the first round. I just think that's absolutely ridiculous. I think if you're going to pride yourself on defense and being a defensive team, that I don't understand why you'd put Marcus Morris against Luka Doncic. It just doesn't make any sense. I think the Clippers get overhyped, and I don't know, if I was them, I would definitely be nervous about whoever comes out of this first round matchup, because both of their guards are playing absolutely incredibly well in Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell. And who are you going to put on them? I mean, Patrick Beverley isn't healthy right now. If he comes back healthy, still at the same time, I think Patrick Beverley's a lot more noise than he is a legitimate defender in this league. I'm not saying he's a bad defender, but I think a lot of it's just he tries to get under your skin. He's not an actual good defender. And especially if the Nuggets win, I think they have the depth throughout their entire roster to combat in my opinion, the sometimes dirty play of the Clippers. And so I think it'll go 7, but I do think the Clippers will come out on top because at the end of the day, they are the better team. And then I think we'll see the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals.
So I would like to address you talk about Kawhi and Paul George not being elite against Luka. Obviously, I don't have a legit reason as to why they weren't guarding him. If I had to guess, though, I would assume that they were just saving their energy, because the Clippers had to assume that they were gonna get past the Mavs. I mean, almost everyone assumed that. So
why would you need to save your energy
because it's a deep playoff run.
If you stop Luka Doncic, you win the series. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, and they didn't even stop Luka Doncic, and they still won the series. So
they won the series because Kristaps Porzingis was out for most of the series.
Either way, they won the series, and they didn't have to guard Luka, and they didn't have to guard Luka as hard. So either way, they're in good condition. I mean, Paul George has not been shooting well. Don't get me wrong, but I think he's really going to turn around the next series and get some great momentum leading into the Western Conference Finals and potentially the NBA Finals. So I really think that first series for the Mavs was just getting the dust off their shoulders and really figuring out what they need to do in this playoff run.
Yeah, for me, I mean, although the Clippers didn't really get to prove themselves against a healthy Mavericks team, they still found a way to win the series, and that's all that really matters when it comes down to the playoffs. And so I'm not going to fault them for how they did it. Doc Rivers and the team got it done. And even without Kristaps, there was a lot of other really good offensive players for the Mavericks that helped them have the historically great offensive season. And so I don't think you can just discount Kristaps Porzingis' absence in that series as something that's going to be used against the Clippers going forward. At the end of the day, they still got it done.
Well, I agree they got it done. I'm just saying, I don't understand why you would rather have all these super close games and let the series go to 6 games when it's unnecessary. I mean, yeah, sure, at the end of the day, you can get the series done, but why not absolutely demolish your team and try and win as few games as possible? I mean, for example, the game where Luka scored the buzzer beater, why in the world are you switching Reggie Jackson on a Luka Doncic for the last play of the game? That's ridiculous.
I think that was a rare mistake by Kawhi rather than a coaching mistake.
But I disagree. I don't think it's a rare mistake because we saw it all series. I mean, they constantly switch off them. They don't let Kawhi and Paul George take that defensive assignment. I think that's partly on them, but I think a lot of that's on Doc Rivers. I think Doc Rivers needs to tell one of those guys, hey, I want you to take the defensive assignment of the best player on the other team tonight and stop them, and let's absolutely demolish them in this game. I don't know. I think that's a little bit on the players, but a lot on the coach.
We need to be honest, though, because I think the coach is helping determine, who all these defensive matchups, and especially as the series progresses and they know the nuances of the play styles of the players. I think looking back at it, here in a month, we can be saying that was a great coaching decision by Doc Rivers because they were able to get past the Mavericks without having to expend extra energy from Kawhi and playoff P. And so,
pandemic
P. Do you think that saving the energy of Paul George or Kawhi Leonard from taking the defensive assignment is worth playing the extra games in a series? I mean, that doesn't you're spending more energy playing those extra games because you refuse to take the defensive assignment and annihilate your team in less games. Or your opponent in less games. I don't know. I disagree with that philosophy that it's okay to not try and beat your opponent by as many points as possible to conserve energy or something. I mean, it's the playoffs. At the end of the day, you're trying to absolutely kill your team every night and win as quickly as possible. I don't know. I don't like the conserve energy mindset, especially when it comes to the playoffs.
Well, this is Kawhi, and when it comes to conserving energy, I mean, look, Mr. Load Management. He conserved
energy
here
all regular season for the playoffs. So
yeah.
Is he really that tired? Are they really that tired in the first round that they can't take that first round matchup? I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why you would need to conserve energy in the first round.
Because they have a lot more than just that first round. I mean, they're going to have a late playoff
Are
run.
they going to be that physically exhausted by taking a defensive matchup that they won't be ready to play in the second round?
Okay, one defensive. Either way, it's all beside the point now because they're in the second round, and I think we all three can agree that this matchup won't be a huge problem for the Clippers in the long run.
But what happens if let's just say let's say the Nuggets win the game 7. I mean, are we going to say if the Clippers are just going to be like, you know what? We don't want Paul George or Kawhi Leonard to waste their energy against guarding Jamal Murray, so we're just going to let Jamal Murray score 40 points a night. I mean, to me that's ridiculous, and that's how you lose a series because you're like, oh, we'll win the next game or something like that. Let's just let our stars conserve energy. I don't know. For a team that prides themselves on defense, I don't know why you wouldn't let your best defenders play against the other team's best offensive player. I mean, I don't know. That kind of blows my mind.
Well, I'll just say this to close. I think what they should do is they should put Kawhi and Paul George on their best player all the time, and that'll lock them up. But I can't see. Wow, I really lost my point. All I know is if. Wow.
I mean, I'm not saying you have to have. Maybe you let Paul George take the defensive assignment one night and let Kawhi go to work offensively. You can rotate him off. I don't know. I mean, for a team that's been going on and on about how great they are defensively and how their entire lineup can switch and play all this great defense, why would you not put your best defenders on the best offensive player on the other team? It just doesn't make sense to me. That's on the players and on the coach.
It sounds a little bit like you answered your own question. They have that team mentality on defense, and as long as they're getting the W in the win column every more times than the other team in these series, it doesn't matter. And
but so, I don't know why you're holding when you go against a tough team.
I don't know why you're holding this level of scrutiny against the Clippers specifically when you could say the same thing about the Lakers and some of their aspects and how they approached Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard
didn't go off in that series at all.
Up until the injury, game 1, what did he put up? 35?
Yeah, game 1 they had a solid game. The Lakers didn't come ready to play. After game 1, the Trailblazers were absolutely terrible. The last 4 games. I don't know. I thought the Clippers and Mavericks were a close series, and the Clippers were playing a team where they had a player who was the best player on the court. I don't know why you wouldn't put your defenders on them, your better defenders. It doesn't make sense.
Here's what I was trying to say. If you have an elite player and you can have not one of your elite players, if you're going against an elite player and you don't put an elite player guarding him, but you can still win, I'm going to do that rather than waste my elite player's energy guarding another elite player in a matchup that you're already going to win.
Right.
That was the point that I was trying to make.
But that's my point is the Clippers, I mean, of course, the Clippers think they're going to win every series. I mean, that's sports. You always think you're going to win. But I think that cockiness is what's going to hold them back. I think the fact that the Clippers think, oh, well, we don't need to put our best players against the other team, have them have the hardest defensive matchup every night. I think that's going to cost them games. It cost them games in the first round, and I think it's going to cost them games in the second round to make this series a lot closer than people think.
But if you get more wins than the games that you're conceding, it doesn't matter. And so I'm with you, Ben. I think it can be smart tactfully to do that, those defensive assignments as well, and help conserve the energy. But I think with David, we're just going to have to agree to disagree because we can't talk.
Yeah, we're just going to have to see how this plays out in the second round, honestly. I mean, we'll see how this series goes.
So, but just to be clear, David, you still have the Clippers winning.
I have Clippers, but I have it going 7.
7, okay.
Assuming the Nuggets win. There.
All right.
So, all right. Well, that wraps up our episode for the day in the second round matchups, and we'll see how these all play out. Peace.